Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Sade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Sade Curry. I am your Dating After Divorce coach. And today I am dealing with another subject that I have noticed in women who are dating after divorce. One of the deeper challenges that I notice in people who say, hey, I've done everything. I've been single for so long. I've tried everything. I've done all the things. I'm giving up on dating. One of the things that I've noticed that tends to be present when I'm working with women who have had this story is personalization. They take things very personal. They take things in their lives very personal. And in the dating world where we have this very strong narrative that your value is dependent on your relationship status, where the internet is constantly giving you all kinds of advice, constantly shaming people. If you are someone who takes things personally, if you are someone who has this cognitive distortion of personalization, you could live in this state of constantly feeling rejected, like just feeling rejection and shame all the time because you haven't found a relationship yet, or because something happened when you were on the dating app. Someone ghosted you. Someone said something unkind. You've been on 5 dates and they haven't worked out. You've been dating for 6 years after your divorce and all of the men just aren't great. The profiles you see just seem to be the wrong people. You just keep attracting the wrong people. All of these challenges and all of these problems do exist in the world. These are things that do happen. The difference between someone who is able to have a good dating experience and move through dating challenges successfully to find a partner and the person who is not able to in this situation is whether or not you take these things personally, whether or not you think that these things are caused by you because there's something fundamentally wrong with you, if they are fundamentally your fault, or you go the other extreme and you project the blame for the experience you're having on someone else, where it is the men out there. All the men are terrible. The men out there are horrible. There's no men in my city. When you start having some of these more extreme thoughts in your head, you are potentially participating or have the habit of personalization. So I'm going to read the definition of personalization. It's a cognitive distortion, which just means a thinking error, a way of thinking that is incorrect or that is not based in facts or logic. Personalization is a cognitive distortion that involves thinking that most things are about you, caused by you, or your fault. It can also involve blaming yourself or others disproportionately to the effects of an outcome or projecting blame onto another person. This type of thinking is often associated with negative or self-deprecating thinking. So let's break that down. First of all, how negative is your thinking in general? That is one place to start to say, okay, is this taking things personal thing, something that I do? And I want you to think about your day-to-day. Are you typically thinking negatively about yourself, about the way you look, about your body, about your status in life, about your accomplishments, about where you are? Do you constantly feel like you're behind and nothing good is happening for you? Are you constantly thinking that people are doing something to you, that people are wrong, that people are bad, that people are being horrible? Now, it doesn't mean that there are not circumstances or situations that are unpleasant happening. What I want you to check on is the volume of thoughts that you have. Do you have a high volume of thoughts assigning blame for things that don't go as planned? And the reason this is important is that life doesn't always go as planned, just as it is. The reality of life is that it doesn't matter how hard other people work to make life better. It doesn't matter how hard you work to make life better. Things will frequently not go as planned. And what I have noticed with my clients and women that I've talked to who take things personally is that they do not have the flexibility of mind to allow for things going wrong some of the time. And what I do with them is I work to build their emotional resilience so that they can start to expect that some things in life will not go as planned. Dating will not always go as planned. There will be some profiles that will be gross. There will be some dates that won't be as wonderful as you wanted them to be. There will be tons of people that you will go on a first date with that will turn out not to be right for you. In fact, 99 out of 100 of the people that you're going to date are not going to be for you because you're just looking for that one person who is right for you. And so I found that when a woman is unable to tolerate or experience the discomfort of things not going as she planned or as she wanted or as she hoped, she tends to take it personally. Like, oh my goodness, I went on this date and he wasn't the one. And it starts this spiral of feeling rejected, feeling like they did something wrong, feeling like they shouldn't have swiped right on that person because the date went wrong. They should have known from the profile that he wasn't the one. They should have maybe said something a different way to make that guy want to go on a second date. They take everything personally, like they could have done something different. And while that is sometimes partially true, most of the time it isn't true. In dating, there's so many variables that come together when it comes to finding a good match that often you're just not a match with that person. Often you're just not, you just didn't like that person. And the fact that you swiped right on them and you went on a first date to verify that maybe give them a chance and they turned out not to be right. There's nothing wrong with that. That is actually what dating is supposed to be like. You're supposed to go on these dates. Some of them will work out, most of them won't work out, and you learn from it. And one of the things that moving into the negative thinking of taking things personally does is that it keeps you from learning. So if there's something fundamentally wrong with you in your thinking, or there's something fundamentally wrong with the men out there or the people out there, there's no room in that narrative for creativity and for experimentation and for improving your dating journey. So my dating program is all about experimenting, building a strong foundation, experimenting with it, tweaking what we learned during that experimentation phase, and then being able to go directly to the person that you want. And that is literally what I do with my clients. We set that strong foundation of their core values, and then we go try it out, right? And so the first month is really setting the foundation. The next 2 months are, all right, let's see if the foundation we set is the right one. And then we tweak it. And the clients that have the flexibility of mind to stay in that experimentation stage and tweak and learn and change things without feeling like they have to protect themselves and stay safe, and without feeling like they are going to fall into a shame spiral because something didn't work out. Usually between 4 to 6 months, they see a huge turnaround in their dating journey, and many of them are in a relationship that they want at about that time. And I want to say that taking things personally is really a very self-centered way of thinking. And I say this with so much love. It's really hard to say something like that to someone who takes things personally, because then that statement can also be taken personally. Like, oh my God, now I'm self-centered. And many times when I'm working with women, even showing them their thinking tends to trigger even more shame. It tends to trigger even more guilt, even more self-doubt. It tends to trigger even more negative thinking about themselves, that the fact that they are taking things personally, like, hey, you're taking it personally. Oh, great. Now I'm going to beat myself up for taking it personally. And so then they add more suffering on it. So when I'm working with a client, I try to be really gentle when I am dealing with this particular issue, because for someone who is shame-based, who was made to feel excessively responsible for things as a child, who was made to feel excessively responsible for things in their first marriage, who was with a narcissist who, oh my goodness, narcissists will do a number on you when it comes to this. If you weren't taking things personally before you married a narcissist, you probably are by the time you're done. And what happens is if you grew up in any of those environments, or you participated in any of those environments for a really long time, you've had to become really rigid in your thinking to protect yourself from the shame of all of that responsibility that was put on you. And so often what I have to do with a client is say, hey, let's start untangling that shame. Let's start applying some healing and some compassion and some self-love to that part of you that really, really thinks that you are the one creating all of the horrible things in the world. All of the horrible things that have happened were all your fault. And, if you had parents that gave you that message, if you had an ex that gave you that message, I want to let you know that that is not your fault. However, if that thinking has been installed, then it might be sabotaging your dating journey. You might be trying to protect yourself from anything going wrong to the point that you become excessively perfectionistic about the way you date. You do not have the flexibility of mind to participate in multiple dates and multiple scenarios and multiple situations that help you grow into the person that can find the partner that you want. Or you might be a person who is rigid in the sense that you think that the world should exist in a certain way. People should always be good and kind and nice. So this is the opposite side, where you're projecting blame on other people. You think everyone out there should be good, they should be nice, all the men should be respectful, all the men. And of course, we want everyone in the world to be good, kind, decent people. But the reality is that they are not. That is just the reality. And that reality is not something you need to take personally. That reality is just the way the world is. The sky is blue, grass is green. A good percentage of the people out there in the world are just not going to be for you. They're just not going to be nice. They're going to be trolls. They're going to send dick pics. And if you don't expand your emotional resilience to be able to be at peace while accommodating the knowledge that the world is not a perfect fairy tale place, you will be in fight mode. You will be on the apps, blaming everyone, angry all the time, and then looking for ways to protect yourself from this, in a sense, war zone that you've created in your own head, right? So while we try to keep ourselves safe in the dating world, overall, when you go on an app, you can always walk away from someone who isn't for you. But if you are in your head, if you're walking around having arguments with these men and blaming them and talking to them and venting to your girlfriends about them and going on and on about it, that's just another way of taking the reality of the world personally. And that is not useful either. How I recognize people who have that habit of personalization is that they are often swinging back and forth from dating to giving up on dating. I'm giving up on online dating. I'm giving up on men. I'm giving up on all this, which is amazing. Listen, in my coaching practice, I always want to establish that the women I work with really, really, really want to meet a partner, right? If they really are not sure they want a partner for the second half of their life, listen, it is all good. I often work with women who decide that they don't want a partner, and we help them create the life that they want. I have one partner who decided to move from the suburbs into the city, and she bought a gorgeous apartment and pursued her career as an artist and started traveling. It was great. It was great. As good as having a partner, seriously. So if you find yourself swinging back and forth, so that I'm not talking about someone who decides not to have a partner. I'm talking about someone who's constantly swinging back and forth, right? So you go on the apps and you have a negative experience, and then you take it personally and you spiral out, and then you're like, I'm done. And you delete the apps and everything. And then 3 days later, you feel bad about being single. You feel bad because you're alone. You feel like you don't have a life. You feel all of these things, and then you go back. That is someone who is, you're in personalization for sure, and some other things. And this is because you have this very strong inner critic, this very strong inner negative voice about yourself, about your life, about your experiences. So because you have a strong inner negative voice about your dating experiences, you jump out of dating. And then because you also have a strong inner negative voice chattering about the fact that you want a partner and you don't have one, and you should have one, and you should be able to do this, you jump back into dating. And that jumping back and forth completely sabotages your ability to learn to date in a way that gets you a partner, which then creates a spiral where you're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, not learning anything, not growing, because you're not staying in the process long enough to develop those muscles, to experience that discomfort, to experiment, try things, change, tweak, grow. You stay in the place where you're not meeting a partner because you're not in that growth process, but you're also beating yourself up about the whole thing. So taking things personally creates this very self-indulgent, self-pitying spiral where you do some things that deep down are not likely to work out, but you're like, well, I'm just going to do it anyway because I can't do anything else and nothing else is happening. It's like the F it scenario. And then when it doesn't work out, now you have even more ammunition for beating yourself up, for self-pity, for self-deprecation. And at a certain point, depending on how long this has been going on with you, this kind of negative thinking may have become an actual habit. If you've been doing it since you were a kid, since you were in your teens, 20s, whatever, it may be a habit at this point. It might become so real that even when you hear about it, it doesn't, you're like, no, this is real. Look at this guy did this and that guy did this and this happened and that happened. The thinking pattern is so real, it can be hard to break out of it. Right? It can be hard to see that there is a different way of thinking, that there's a different way of interpreting the scenarios that you're facing. So I worked with a woman who, was dating, and at a certain point, because of certain taking things personally, she felt like there were no good men in her area, and she was going to expand her filters on the app to include men in other states. Now, I will say this. I am not a fan of long distance relationships. Science, the social psychology really indicates that proximity, nearness, closeness, being in the same geographical area is a huge, huge factor to the success of relationships. So when I work with clients, I don't help them find long distance relationships. I don't help them establish long distance relationships, and I don't try to help them nurture long distance relationships. It is just a personal preference of mine. Now, of course, I know that there are exceptions and there are outliers, but I'm really passionate about helping women get into relationships where they feel the nourishment of the relationship, where they can experience the person that they've chosen, where they can do things together, where whether you choose to live together or not, the person is in your area, you can get together, you can do things, you can have fun, you can actually live the life that you want. Long distance relationships do not provide that. Now, long distance relationships that start online, oh my God, I'm sorry. And I know you all are thinking, oh, there are exceptions. It's just a hard no for me as a coach. It's just not what I dream of for my clients. I really just dream. I want my clients texting me all the time with pictures of themselves and their boo looking cute, having fun. That's what I want. I don't want all that long distance online dating drama. Okay. So back to the story. I was working with this lady. And so she was like, well, I'm just going to open my filters. Well, and first of all, she didn't tell me she was doing this. So, this all happened outside of our coaching sessions. So she did that and she met this guy. He was 2 or 3 states away. They were having this really, really great back and forth. It was amazing. It felt amazing. She felt like, yes, I finally found the guy. And, they were talking, and I think at some point she tried to take the conversation a little bit deeper, and then he started to distance himself. The conversation started to fizzle, and then he ghosted her. And that took her into a deep, deep self-pitying, feeling like she was never going to find someone. There was a lot of shame. There was a lot of guilt. There was a lot of self-doubt. And when we talked about it, Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, you will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, sadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to sadecurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode. I showed her that, long distance relationships are not likely to work out. This had nothing to do with her. It had nothing to do with her lovability, with her attractiveness, with how wonderful she is. And she's an amazing, intelligent, fabulous woman, like really fabulous. I was like, this had nothing to do with you. This was not something you did wrong. This was not something, you were not rejected. This man did not reject you. Long distance relationships just don't work out. It's just kind of close to being a fact, in this context, because, again, this was online. I was like, there's no reason to beat yourself up over something that was never going to work out. You meet someone online, even if they live in your city, the odds that it works out are quite low, which is why I have a process that helps you identify those pretty early so that you really are only putting energy into the ones that are likely to work out. But you go out of that process, you're talking to someone 3 states away, and somehow in your mind, you think that it's going to work out. And when it doesn't, you beat yourself up as though you were wrong. And this really comes down to, and this is why I call it it's a very self-centered way of thinking, because somehow in her mind, her brain had caused her to believe that she had the power, that if she was a good person, that she was good enough, she could have caused this man 3 states away to choose her as his next spouse. Just logistically, it was unlikely to happen, right? And what would have been great was if she participated in that conversation, had some fun, and kept in mind the reality that it was not likely to work out. She could have had fun with that conversation. She could have learned some things, which we actually did. We ended up taking the guy's profile and the things she liked about him, tweaking her profile so that she could attract someone who was more like that guy, but in her state, right? She could have enjoyed that interaction and enjoyed his attention for a minute while holding on to the realistic thought that, this is not likely to work out because he's 3 states away. But because she imputed to herself the responsibility of making that relationship work, she ended up taking it very personally when it didn't. And again, a lot of this comes from childhood trauma. If a child who has no power, to do things was made to feel like they are responsible for things they have no control over, that can really, really damage that sense of self, right? And I remember there were some situations in my childhood that, really translated to that. During my parents' divorce, I remember, they would have their back and forth, there were all kinds of things that would happen. And one parent would do something like one parent would pick us up from school before the other one could pick us up from school. And the parent who didn't get to pick us up from school would then blame us kids for allowing the other parent to pick us up from school, right? And so I do recognize the kind of damage that can be done to a kid when they are blamed for something they have no control over. And so with this client of mine, I also recognize that that's some of what's happening with her, is that she feels like she has the ability to control being loved. And you really don't. We really don't. Some people are going to love us. Some people are not going to love us. And with dating, listen, dating is like it's a whole mess out there. Now, when I say it's a mess, I don't mean that you can't find a partner. I just mean we have to not self-sabotage with all of these cognitive distortions. And taking things personally is a huge one. So what do you want to do? What should you do about taking things personally? If you find yourself someone who does that, you want to work on changing your patterns of thinking. So this is not about changing your profile or any of those things, even though you might need to. Taking things personally is a way of thinking. It's like it's a groove in your brain. It's a well-worn path, you know. The first thing you want to do is to start noticing when and how often you take things personally, not just with dating, just in your life in general. When do you feel that twinge of being hurt by someone? When do you feel that twinge of shame, like you didn't do something right? When do you have that chatter in your head telling you did something wrong? You should have done this. You should have. Anytime you hear the words should, you know, what's wrong? If you hear the phrase, what's wrong with you? Why did I do that? All of that, you want to pause. My recommendation is you have a little notebook and just start writing it down. And it might seem like a lot of negativity coming out. That's a good thing because it's better for that negativity to be out on paper than rolling around in your brain. Okay, so the more you can get it out on paper, the more you can log it, the better. One, it gets it out of your brain. Two, it helps you see just how negative your brain has been. And that will create a lot of self-awareness that will help you change it. You can't change what you're not aware of. You can't change it if you don't see it. So let's start by just seeing it. The second thing is to notice how you feel when those thoughts come up. When you start to take things personally, what emotions come up for you? Is it shame, anxiety, despair, self-pity, anger, fear? What comes up for you? Got to recognize those emotions, and you're going to have to work through those emotions. You're going to have to process those emotions. Thirdly, separate yourself from situations. Separate your person and your value and who you are from things happening around you, from things happening to you, and even from the things you do, right? So let's say I walk down to my kitchen and I get a glass of water and the glass slips to the ground and it shatters on the floor. All that has happened is I dropped a glass and it broke. That does not mean that I am clumsy. That does not mean I am stupid. That does not mean I am terrible. That does not mean all of those personalization type statements that can come up. They are not real. I can drop a glass and shatter it on the ground without all of those things, all of that negative thinking being true. I can drop a glass on the ground and it shatters and still be graceful and beautiful and wonderful and lovely. And this is the key to starting to create that emotional resilience and flexibility, is to compassionately view situations, right, that happen, even things that you do, even mistakes that you make, without interpreting them in a way that damages you. And then finally, especially in the dating area, identify what is within your control. When it comes to dating, someone ghosts you. Instead of spiraling down, negative thinking, despair, all those things, ask yourself, what is within my control about this? What's within your control is to move on to the next, right? Or take a break, or, go out and try to meet someone in person. What is within your control in that situation? And take your attention off the situation that is triggering, taking it personally, that's triggering shame and anxiety and despair, and put your attention and focus on the things that are actually within your control. Taking things personally can cause so much anxiety. It can lower your self-esteem. If you feel bad, if your general state of feeling is one that's kind of negative around something, potentially you are taking a situation in your life very personally. You're taking things personally. And that is something you really, really want to look at so that you can start to open up to possibilities, open up to opportunities, open up to love, open up to joy, and open up to that extraordinary life that you want after your divorce. All right. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have questions, please reach out, schedule a consultation call with me. I'm happy to talk to you. And I just want to thank you for your time and attention today, and I will see you next time. Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to sadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.